Okay, here is an LD-1B2. I've already removed all 8 screws, both end panels, and both of the plastic, I think they're called bezels. It's either that or a scutcheon, I can't remember which. Now I'm going to remove the bottom plate from the enclosure, and that exposes the receiver board. Please notice which slot the receiver is in. There is a slot right here that the bottom panel slides into. It's not that slot, but it is the slot just above it. Of course, it's turned upside down right now, so it's below it. Now I'll slide the receiver out and set the enclosure aside for a moment. I'm going to set the receiver down like so. Here's the 10-pin shrouded header, all of the connectors, switch, and the LED. Here's the transmitter board. Notice this cutout, which will fit around the 10-pin shrouded header. Also notice that on the receiver board there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 male headers. Of those, one has 8 pins, one has 4 pins, and the remaining 5 have 6 pins each. Each one of those will fit into a corresponding female header on the transmitter board. For that to happen, we have to flip the transmitter board over so that it will fit about like so, and then it's very important to check and just very lightly seat the pins. Try to get it correct the first time. It's no big deal if you don't. Seat the pins in the correct holes and check, turning the board around so you can see it first from one side and then from the other, to make sure that all of the pins are going into the right place and none of them are misaligned. That's very important. Now set it down. Gently but firmly press down until it goes down as far as it can. Don't force it. In some cases it may not go down all of the way because it does tend to bump into the power switch and maybe 1 or 2 other things. So now you've actually connected the transmitter to the receiver, and all that needs to be done is to put the whole thing back in the enclosure. And it's going to go back in just the way it was. The transmitter board, as you see, is somewhat narrower. It doesn't actually fit in a slot. It'll fit between the slots. If you have one of the first boards, though, it may be a little bit tight. So fit the receiver board. Notice that component side is down. Fit it into the same slot it was in before. And this could be a little bit of a tight squeeze with the transmitter. In this case it's not, but in some it is. And then slide that back in until there's maybe 1.5 inches or so. This isn't critical, but you probably don't want less than that. It helps with the rest of the procedure. Exposed. Slide the bottom plate back in all the way. Put the plastic piece, make sure you get it turned the right way, over the front end, and then the other one over the rear end. And because the board is hanging out, that is a little bit, not really more difficult, it just takes a little more care. And then this sequence is somewhat important. Put the rear end panel on first. Now make sure that the countersunk screw holes on the corner, the countersunk side is facing out, and make sure that the hole that the power switch goes through is up with the enclosure turned right side up. Notice the feet are now on the bottom. And then fit it in like so. Now if you have it turned upside down, you may run into a little trouble because the switch and the LEDs won't align with the holes. So you might want to take a look inside first and make sure that the power switch is on your right and the power switch button is slightly higher than the LEDs. The red LED is on your left. And then put the panel back on and put in at least 2 of the screws to begin with. I'm a little lazy about this. I've done so many of them I use a power screwdriver. Don't over tighten if you use a power screwdriver. And then here's the toughest part. The toughest part is getting the rear end panel to fit over everything. It is a little bit tight. First, make sure it's turned the right way with the round RF connector hole on your right and the 2 rectangular holes on your left. And the countersunk beveled edge of the screw holes should be, of course, facing outward. And then you want to make sure that it fits over. Don't force, but be firm. And make sure everything is lining up properly. Fits over the power connector and everything else. And so it looks like that. Everything is, well, the 3 audio jacks are more or less flush. The power connector and the USB connector are slightly inside, and the RF jack is lined up, and the panel is right up next to the end of the board. Now, slide it back in, checking this end to make sure that the power switch button fits through its hole. If it doesn't, if it's misaligned, you may need to loosen these screws a little bit. It may take a little work to get it lined up. You may need to stick some thin object through here to get the button to line up. If you don't do that and you try to force it back in, it'll break the switch. Don't do that. So now that that's through, then press down. And it may not want to go right back into the bezel. This one was a little on the easy side. If it doesn't, get it as close as possible and then put the screws back in and begin to tighten them. And of course, as a person who's familiar with using tools, you should know that the correct way to tighten these screws is to pick one, tighten it, don't over tighten, and then pick the one diagonally opposite, tighten it, and then do the other 2. And that's pretty much it. There's your transceiver. Now, before you go on to the video on actually using it, I'd like to just point out what each of these 3 connectors here are for. Of course, the other 3, the power jack, the USB jack, and the RF connector are obvious. As you probably already know, of the 3 3.5mm audio connectors, the middle one is receive output. So that goes into the line in or mic in connector of your of the sound card you're using as your interface. The one right next to it also right next to the RF connector, that is the input to the transmitter. So that will come from the line out or speaker out connector of your interface sound card. This one is the accessory connector, which can be used for a push-to-talk button. It can also be wired as an output to control some external accessory, like an antenna changeover relay, an external amplifier, transverter, that sort of thing. Okay, that's it. You're pretty much done. Be sure to watch the next video on using it before you try to use it.